This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Kiev O'Neil, the odds breaker, is going to join us. We will go over all of his thoughts on the Super Bowl, props, sleepers for MVP, his thoughts on the side, the total. We will do a little deep dive on the Super Bowl, which I think we've done a nice job of pacing ourselves in the 2 weeks in between the games. Done it here, done it there, just haven't made it everything, haven't completely ignored it, done a little bit on it every show. The Davis Luka trade has helped give us some content in between, and the Fox trade, which I'm going to revisit both those in a minute because I think it's worth rediscussing. So haven't overdone it, but we will, as only a couple shows now between now and the Super Bowl. We'll do more on it today, and we'll do more on it obviously Friday, and then give out. Look, I think if you've listened to the past couple weeks, you know where I stand. I'm going with the Chiefs for all the reasons I talked about. Just hard to go against Mahomes. So we'll see what Kiev thinks, and we'll maybe get into some college basketball with Kiev because he's very sharp in terms of the college hoops as we start to mix in a few more things as football is. Oh boy, it feels like the season's over, doesn't it? It just feels like the 2 weeks after the title game, and it always feels like this, where that kind of ends the season, and then you have a week, and then another week, and then you have another game, but there's just no rhythm to it. There's such a long pause in between. It's not the rhythm of an NFL season where you wake up on a Sunday and you got a million games, and then you got a Sunday night game, and you got a Monday night game. You take Tuesday and Wednesday off, and then you got another game Thursday, then you roll into the weekend. It's just all football all the time. It definitely has a different feel. Feels like the season ended. But I'm going to go back to it. And usually, in the sports landscape, a story happens, a trade happens, you move on, you talk about it, and you just go on to the next thing. This Davis Luka thing was so bizarre that I actually think it's still the biggest story. I'm still in shock by that. And I'm going to get to the Fox trade too, because I thought one of the teams involved there just got completely fleeced. That trade went down as I was recording the Monday show, so I want to get to that more in depth. I know Parles on Monday to talk about. He gave his thoughts. I didn't really give my thoughts. And reading more about this Davis trade, a couple of things. Ethan Strauss, who has a Substack, used to work for ESPN, does a great job. He's a tremendous writer. He wrote a couple things that I thought were interesting. He wrote a post about this, that Harrison, the Mavs GM, is basically I'm going to paraphrase that he was not qualified for this job, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. You can go to his Twitter page and check out his column and see what he actually wrote. That he wasn't really suited for this job, qualified for this job. But those lack of qualifications, and he's, for people that don't know, Nico Harrison's the Mavs GM. He was a Kobe Bryant guy, Kobe Bryant's Nike rep. And Mark Cuban, the Mavs owner, former owner, hired him a few years ago to help with recruiting. He had a relationship with Kobe, had a relationship with Nike. He could help bring in the talent. And that the lack of qualifications for this GM didn't really come to surface because when Cuban's the owner, it's almost like Jerry Jones in football. Cuban is calling all the shots. So you can have a GM, but Cuban's making all the decisions. Cuban's, in fact, sort of the shadow GM. So any sort of shortcomings by Harrison aren't going to get exposed. Well, now Cuban sold the team a year or so ago. Now it is Harrison running the team, and now you have this disaster where he's giving away his best player. He's not shopping him, and what was just a total ripoff, a total catastrophe of a trade. And again, I don't care. You can leak all the reports. Always wait. He's up to 270. I don't care if he looks like Cecil Fielder and he's eating donuts, during timeouts on the bench. You cannot trade this guy, and you definitely cannot trade him for what you got in return. The other aspect with Harrison, the Mavs GM, is, like I said, Harrison is a Kobe guy, was a Kobe guy, and that was not only somebody he had a working relationship with as his Nike rep, but it was someone he looked up to, and almost to the point where he worshipped, where this was his guy. This was almost like idol might be strong, but you get the idea, where he was in reverence of Kobe. And when you talk personalities, Kobe would never be out of shape or come into the finals where he's kind of not with it defensively. You question the effort. I don't want to say question the effort on the court, but you question the conditioning, you question what kind of shape he's in. And the fact that Harrison was so used to Kobe, and that's just his standard, that anything less than that, and especially when you talk about somebody who's gaining weight like Luka is, drinking too much, eating too much, all of the reports that are leaking out, that he likes to have a couple beers after practice or whatever, that he was so turned off by that. He just, I can't deal with this. This isn't my kind of guy. This isn't a guy you go to a championship. So there's that sort of sort of gap between work ethic and approach to the game between what Kobe did and what Luka did. Now, look, Kobe won 1 million championships, and Luka's got a long career ahead of him to see what he can match. And Luka never been on a team with Shaq and never won a team with Gasol, so it's not an apples to apples comparison. But in terms of talent, and it's blasphemy, there's not that much of a gap between talent. I mean, Luka is that good. Again, Kobe won 5 championships, and some of it is luck of being involved with Shaq, but part of it is Kobe's just a relentless competitor, and we haven't seen that kind of drive from Luka. But Luka is that sort of talent to be one of the 15, 20 greatest players of all time. It's not far-fetched to say Luka has that ability. So I think that was there was a disconnect between the work ethic Harrison expected and was used to with Kobe and what he was getting from Luka. So you throw in the fact that maybe this guy wasn't qualified, and Cuban kind of covered up for those deficiencies, and then Cuban's not in charge anymore, and all of a sudden he's front and center and he's giving away Luka for pennies on the dollar, and then the gap between work ethic and you end up with the disaster you have here. Now I don't think it makes. I just think the Mavs would be a dangerous out in the playoffs just because you do have Kyrie and Clay, and you have a whole bunch of size with Davis and with Gafford and with Washington. That's a pretty. I wouldn't be shocked if they make a run. That's a good team. It's just long term. You traded a 25-year-old for a 31-year-old, and the 25-year-old's much better than the 31-year-old. But in terms of a fit, I wouldn't count Dallas out, and I wouldn't crown the Lakers. I understand taking the Lakers 9-10 to 1 to win the West for a couple reasons. You think they're going to make a trade. You think they'll be an attractive buyout candidate. But this team right now is not anywhere near a finished product or like a championship team just because, and again, if you're betting them, you're betting, hey, you're giving me Luka and you're giving me LeBron and you're giving me 10 to 1 odds. I'm going to take them against almost anybody. And Luka has had a history of playing well against OKC, who's obviously the top team in the West. But they need size. And Luka's, a lot of his game is having spot up shooters around him, being able to drive, penetrate, get to the line, and then kick it. There's a lot of similarities between him and LeBron, which is why, as great as it is to have both of them on the same team, there is some overlap with the skill set. But you don't have the shooters around Luka, and you don't have the size you need. And LeBron at this age doesn't play a lot of defense. When he was in his 20s, early 30s, he was just an absolute menace defensively with his size, his speed, his quickness, his strength. It's just at 40, you can't do everything. He's still got the offensive game. And he could still do it possession here, possession there. He just to do it for 48 minutes or however long he plays, 38, 40 minutes a night at his age, it's just not realistic, especially with what he does on offense. So you have Luka and LeBron, who are both unbelievable with the ball in their hands, unbelievable scorers, passers, all of that. But they're both minus defenders. So you need a lot of defense to make up for it. And Dallas did a good job kind of fitting the roster. They got some shooting around him. They got the size last year with Gafford and Washington, the 2 big guys they drafted Lively. So it was a nice roster for Luka, fitting around his skills and fitting around his shortcomings. This roster doesn't have it, and this roster is more of a long-term move for the Lakers, where you got a guy who's 25, and eventually LeBron phases out. Eventually, the rest of this roster phases out, and you can just kind of pick whatever players you want around him. They don't have a lot of draft picks, and they don't have a lot of young players, which is not a good combination. But you have Luka and you have LA, and he's 25, and if you can convince him to stay, which I don't think is a foregone conclusion. I do think that's worth pointing out. But if you can convince him to hang around and just say, you know what, you're going to be here. We've got you. We've got the Laker brand, the Laker uniform, the weather. Once you get to LA, it's hard to leave LA. And we can go shopping for superstars. We can go shopping for whatever kind of roster that fits you best. That might be enough to sell him. And that's probably going to be the plan of attack for the Lakers the next couple of years, is eventually when LeBron phases out, which is why I don't think it's crazy, the idea of shopping LeBron and just trading him for stuff, trading him for younger stuff, and kind of moving on from this LeBron Davis era into a Luka plus young players, shooters, whatever kind of roster you want to mold around him. But the Lakers right now, bottom line, not really a title contender, but you're going to tell me, and this is contradicting what I'm saying, they don't have enough defense, they don't have enough shooting. You're going to go into a series with Luka, LeBron, and you just kind of figure out the rest. You might not win the series, but man, you're going to scare the hell out of a lot of teams, whether it's Houston or Memphis, or even if you got as far as OKC. I think OKC would be too deep. I don't think the Lakers could beat them. They're just too much of a complete team to be tripped up by the Lakers. But I could see a similar scenario to 2 years ago, where the Lakers just got a favorable draw. The West, outside of Denver that year and outside of OKC this year, similarly, it's not that great, where there's nobody you can't beat. You win a round, you win another round, you look up and you're in the conference finals. I wouldn't be shocked if the Lakers won a round or two. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some repairs here in terms of getting a big, getting some shooters, getting some defense. There's a lot needed here, because even though Luka's better than Davis gave you so much defensively, gave you the size, the rebounding, And those guys are just hard to find. And the names you're hearing, the Claxton from the Nets, some of these other guys, Robert Williams, good player, big, but he's hurt a lot. It's going to be hard to get what you need in the next week or so. Trade deadline, buyout market. You'll get something, but you're going to get everything you need. Probably not. So not sure the Lakers are a title contender, but if you told me, like I said, if you told me I bet them 10-1 to win the West, I got Luka, I've got LeBron, and if I get to the conference finals, I can just hedge. I can't say you're crazy. I really can't. The other trade, and again, it happened as we're recording Monday. Fox goes to the Spurs, so the Spurs are not finally, but after Wembanyama gets drafted a year or so ago, plays his rookie year, plays half his second year, we are going to kind of bide our time. The waiting and biding their time is over. The Spurs are now thrusting themselves into where they think, and they probably should be, a contender, a pseudo contender as early as next year. When you have Fox, you have Wembanyama, you throw in some of these young guys who somehow the Kings didn't get any of them. Vassell, Castle from UConn. I thought the Kings got absolutely taken to the cleaners with this deal. I mean, you got 2 first rounders back. I don't want to hear the Hornets first rounder is not a first rounder. That's going to turn into 2 twos. That's lottery protected. So throw that out. That's not a first rounder. They got 2 twos. One of them is from the Spurs in 2 years in 2027. The Spurs are going to be good. There's a good chance that's a useless pick or the end of the first round, which really lacks value. And then a Minnesota pick in 2031. Congratulations. I get you got Levine back, but you also had to give up the 2025 Bulls pick, which you owned, which you gave back to the Bulls. Boy, I thought they really, this return really, really lacked a lot of punch. I mean, they did not reset anything. They kind of put one foot on the line, kind of straddled the line. I mean, we still want to be competitive. We'll take Levine, and maybe they flip Levine for something, but we want a couple picks. I thought they really got short paid here, and I understand they're maybe in a tough spot. Fox wanted out. You're going to lose him for nothing in a year and a half anyway, and he wants to go to the Spurs, but man, I thought they really could have gotten more back. You got to get Castle, or you got to get something you can sink your teeth into out of this deal. One piece, one really prized draft pick, or one really coveted young player, and they got nothing. I mean, you got Levine and you got a couple what could be lousy picks. I mean, those are throwaway picks. The Spurs pick in 2 years. Wemby's going to be entering his prime. Fox is still going to be, in his prime-ish. It's going to be a really good team, barring injury, and maybe you get lucky and Wembanyama gets hurt or something, and then it's a good pick. But you can't count on that. That's a terrible trade. I thought for the Kings, terrible trade. As we look at the finals odds, OKC and Boston both had a coin flips to win their conference, and both right around plus 250 to win the whole thing. Co-favorites, as I think I asked this question maybe on this show or another show. Was OKC Boston, is that finals? Is it possible? Is it likely, or is it inevitable? I'm not sure. I think I think likely is good. Inevitable is too strong. Possible is not strong enough. I think likely is probably the correct answer. As one more thing too, the Warriors in talks to maybe land Durant back. So if you want to, boy, if they got Durant, would that even make them a title contender? I don't know. But at 50-1, if you had a team with Curry and Durant, I mean, it would certainly make the league more fun. If you have Luka on the Lakers, and I still can't believe Luka is on the Lakers. It's going to take me a while for that to sink in. And you have Durant back on the Warriors for another run with Curry. Again, I don't think they're a favorite. I don't know if they're a contender, but at 50-1, if you put Curry and Durant on the same team, same sort of thing with the Lakers, could they win a couple rounds and put yourself in a position where who knows, you get lucky with an injury or you can hedge? That might be worth it. I don't know that the deal will happen, but maybe the Suns are at the point where, you know what, this isn't going to work. Where are we going with Durant? Where are we going with this whole Durant, Beal, Booker? This is not, we got swept last year in the first round. Are we really winning anything? Let's recoup some of these picks, young players, and let's kind of get out of jail here while we still can, because otherwise Durant's going to get older and we're just going to be stuck with this old team, no picks, and we're going to be, in a tough spot. But like I said, the odds, OKC and Boston both plus 250. The New York Knicks, the third favorite to win it all, plus 850. The Cavs are 9-1. The Nuggets are 14-1. The Lakers are 18-1. Memphis and the Clippers are 25-1. The Bucks are 28-1. Dallas is 35-1. And you have Minnesota at 40-1. Phoenix at 45-1. And you have the Warriors and the Rockets both at 50-1. Boy, the Rockets have a good young team. It just feels like a step too early for them. Think about the West. In the West, man, it seems like ever since I've been watching basketball, the West is just always better than the East. I would say since post Jordan, as long as I can remember, like all the LeBron years, the West has been better. Like the West is just always better than the East. The West is just a lot deeper than the East. There's maybe more top end talent in the East because you have the Celtics, you have the Knicks, you have the Cavs. I mean, you have 3 of the 4 top favorites in the East, but there's just a lot of depth in the West. I don't think it's as drastic, the gap between the West and the East this year. Again, 3 of the 4 top in the East. So maybe the East is a little stronger at the top, but just feels like there's always more depth with the West. And sometimes there's also more depth and more top end talent, which really leads to some lopsided conference. Plus the fact that the Sixers just being a total throwaway, and they were one of the short shots coming in, one of the favorites. The Heat not really being there. Milwaukee's still a disappointment. You have a lot more just kind of meet with these 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the West, and you still got Denver there. You still got the Lakers with Luka, and you got maybe I don't think Dallas is an easy out. Minnesota's got talent. The Suns, if they kept their guys, that's not an easy out. Well, the Warriors, if they got Durant, that's not easier. So there's a lot more tougher outs, I would say, in the West than the East. So we'll see what happens. I don't see a great number here. I don't see, again, if you think Durant's going to go to the Warriors 50-1 on Durant, 50-1 on the Warriors, a team with Durant and Steph. Steph has shown his age. I just scanning these box scores some nights. There's a lot of 2 for 12 from 3 and a lot of off nights from Curry. But if you had Durant, I don't know, probably not enough, but again, at least makes them fun. But I don't know that there's like a great bet here. And we'll see. The trade deadline is Thursday. I don't expect a ton of major moves, but I didn't expect Luka Doncic to be traded on Saturday night into Sunday either. So who the hell knows? The league went through this period where there were so many trades all the time. You couldn't even keep track. These guys are changing teams every 2 minutes. Harden's changing teams. LeBron's changing teams. Durant's going all over the place. It's settled down recently. Maybe this Luka trade kind of stirs things up where teams that have veterans say, you know what, where's this thing going? Maybe we got to get off this and rebuild, get some younger players, get out of win now mode, and maybe have some of these other teams that kind of go for it. I think the Warriors are a perfect example of that, where they're not a contender as currently constructed, but they're not rebuilding. Either trade Curry and rebuild and just tank and kind of bottom out and get picks, get young players, and just kind of set the table for the next run for the Warriors, or give Steph some help and make one more run. Again, I don't think they're one player away from winning a championship, but like I said, if you add another great player to Curry, maybe that frees up some space for him. He doesn't have to do as much, and maybe you can sort of like the Lakers end up deep in the playoffs where you give yourself a shot. I think they have to do one or the other, and I don't think they're trading Curry, especially not during the season. But they are completely stuck in the middle, which, as we know, that's the one thing you don't want to be in the NBA, is stuck in the middle where you're drafting 15th and 16th, or you're a playing team, you're not a contender, but you're not picking towards the top. You got to pick a direction in the NBA. I wonder if the Warriors do that over the next couple days. But let's talk some Super Bowl. Let's talk some college basketball. Kiev O'Neil, he is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Let's talk a little Super Bowl. Only a handful of days away. Nobody better to discuss it than our buddy. You can catch him at the Odds Breakers. It is the great Kiev O'Neil. Kev, Super Bowl is here. One game left. It almost feels like football season ends once you get the conference championship games over with. There's such a gap in between. It's only one game. It's sort of a depressing couple of weeks, but we got one game. Let's break it down. First of all, how's it going, man? Are you excited for this game?
Yes, I am excited for the game. And now everyone, the matchup is what it is. It's not what everybody wanted, but you know what? There's still props to bet, Will. There's still money to be made, and even if it's something that you didn't want, there's lots of ways to bet this game and lots of ways to make money. And that's the exciting part, is just all the fun we can have with it, and just rooting for the game within the game.
We'll get to some of the props, obviously, and some of the things you like. Let's just get into the side. I've been saying, I get the Philly perspective. You're probably pound for pound the better roster. You're getting a 1.5. And in a playoff game, this landing on one's not impossible, because if you go to overtimes, team that scores second can go for 2. I get all that. I'm just going to be, I don't even know if it's square, it's sharp. I know it's nothing profound. I have a hard time when the line is less than a field goal betting against Mahomes. It's worked out well the past couple of years. He's too good. Him and Andy Reid in a close game. I don't trust the Philly kicking situation. So I am sort of reluctantly going with the Chiefs. I know it doesn't feel like the right side. I know Philly, I get their case, but where did you come down in terms of the side here?
Well, it's funny. You say, sharp or square. It's like, how do you say, like, betting the Chiefs is not sharp at this point? I mean, they figure out how to win games. They have coaching advantages out of everyone. It's just when your coach is that good, when your quarterback's that clutch in situations, That's how they win games. It's almost like the definition of insanity. You keep repeating the same thing over and over and keep losing. I don't want to be in that boat, Will. I mean, every metric handicap has the Eagles winning that I can find, that I do with my algorithms, that my power ratings have. I look at all the power ratings out there and they have the Eagles favored because of the metrics. But at the same time, the intangibles really favor the Chiefs. You have the best coach out there. I think they're going to really try to shorten this game. I think they're going to see some very slow drives. They're going to get to first down on maybe a 4th and 1, a 3rd and 3. And that's how they're going to like it, because they want to race to the end. Because at the end, the Chiefs have the best coach, the most clutch quarterback, and one hell of a defensive coordinator in Spags. And that's a smart way to play it. This ain't the old Chiefs of 5 years ago when we saw shootouts. If they're smart, they're going to drain that clock, play very solid, don't break me defense, and that might be enough for them, Will.
Do you have a feel side or total, a feel for the total here? Sitting around 48.5, 49, depending on where you shop.
So and I bet the Super Bowl this way pretty much every year. What's funny is, out of the 6 or 7 years, the only time it didn't work out for me was in this matchup a couple years ago. The first half over went over, but I still like the first half under a lot, just because of what I said about the Chiefs, how they're going to drain the clock. I think that the Eagles are not going to want to make that big interception right away. They're probably going to feel like what happened last year. They don't want to play a little bit too aggressive. And I think the Chiefs are going to, that plays into their hand a little bit. I think the Chiefs are going to want to keep this a very slow moving game, short passes. I don't see receivers getting a lot of love on the Chiefs. I think it's going to be, a lot of tight ends, maybe some Noah Gray, some throws to the running back. Maybe Mahomes is going to run for 40 or 50 yards. So, I would rather bet, besides the first half under was 24.5, 24 I like as well. I would rather bet an alt line on the Eagles than bet a side in this game, Will. I can't pick a side. I'm just too down the middle, where I can see how both situations can really work. But if the Eagles are going to win, Will, they have to be up by 2 scores. They are not going to win this game if Mahomes has the ball with 7 or less points being up. And hell, the Chiefs might even go for 2 if they get that game-winning touchdown. So from a side, I wish I had more for you, but I really like the first half under, and I might come back on the second half over, because that's been pretty profitable in Super Bowls in the past as well.
How much of a concern, Elliott, the Eagles kicker? I feel like it hasn't been discussed a lot enough. He's been bad. He's missed kick against Washington. Now they won by 1,000,000 points, so it kind of got overshadowed. He missed a couple points. He missed a couple extra points against the Rams. He's been shaky all year, and I thought this was a kind of underrated handicap last year, where Butker versus Moody was a decided edge for Butker, who's been there. He's done that. He's made clutch kicks. Does the kicking angle here factor into your handicap of the game and props? Maybe Philly goes for it more on 4th down. Maybe you look towards 4th down conversions over.
Well, I think you said it there. They're not going to win the game on Reed's leg. It's going to be them going for 4th. And I think Sirianni is that kind of coach that has that aggressiveness. Now, he's not quite as much as Dan Campbell. He'll take points when he needs it, but he's going to be aggressive and go for it a lot. So I'm not sure Reed would be a factor in their victory. And he might not be the reason they lost, unless
you mean Elliott. You mean Elliott, not Reed, right? You mean Elliott?
Yeah, I meant to say Elliott. Correct. Thank you. I don't know why I confused them, but Elliott would be the one to have to do that at the end. I don't want to say he's terrible. He was a good kicker for a while. As you've seen, even Justin Tucker kind of turn around. But I will say Butker is definitely another advantage special teams for Kansas City. As a matter of fact, I like Butker to kick the first field goal at the -110. And I also think the first score is going to be a field goal, because that's how it is in the Super Bowl. They're not going to take any chances, throw the pick, change momentum. First score field goal hits really well. And +150 at DraftKings, or if you get creative, find some offshores, you can be at bet each side +350 and actually get more of a +170, 175 if you use blended odds. But I like first score field goal, and I think Butker does definitely have the nod over Elliott.
There's so many props available. There's such a wide, vast menu when you get to the Super Bowl. For people that aren't as experienced, like, where do you start? Where do you start? Where do you leave out? How do you attack this big menu? What are some things you just you kind of cut out? How do you dive into this menu? It's almost like going to a diner and there's 100 things on the menu. You want to whittle it down to, hey, what am I actually going to order here? But how do you approach that?
Yeah, I like to arrange my portfolio with situations that can go awry, I'm still going to be able to cash. Like if you're one of those people that, are liking you look at what you bet and you're like, "Oh my God, I just bet like 10 overs and 2 unders." You better hope for a high scoring game, because they all can go awry for you. I like the way of just the way that the game's going to flow is trying to how I do it. And I have little fail safes for both sides. For example, I think that Eagles will move the ball well through their tight end. As a lot of people know now, I've heard on a few shows, Kansas City allows about 71 yards per game to tight ends, which is the worst in the nation. I think Dallas Goedert will get his 4.5 or higher reception. So that was one of the first plays I made last week. Um, I also think that going back to what I said, you're still going to have to take some overs and some unders. So I see guys like Samaje Perine getting a couple receptions, right? So Perini is plus 195 over 1.5 reception. I think Pacheco gets a catch or two over 3.5 receiving yards. I think they're going to try to stop Kelsey, but why not even pick on Noah Gray a little bit? So I'm going to bet a lot of Chiefs receivers unders, but I'm also going to bet some running back overs. If it does turn into a shootout, you're probably going to lose on one side and gain a little bit on the other, right? So if the game's not going your way, there's still other ways to cash. Saquon Barkley is going to be the highest bet. I bet you the sports books have the most liability on his 2 touchdown plus. I've heard from other bookies and some guys that work behind the counter that that's one of their biggest exposed bets right there. So, I'm probably going to wait and take Barkley under 130 something rushing and receiving yards. I think that number is going to climb, but when Gainwell gets announced in, I could also see a drop. So I'm trying to plan it where, Gainwell is still in concussion protocol, maybe to a Wednesday or Thursday before I take that Barkley under.
What's some of the stuff to stay away from? I know that with this stuff, they like to put out fun stuff, but with the fun stuff, they don't always give you a fair price. They don't always put a yes, no. So it's a one-way market. How do you approach what to stay away from?
Stay away from one-way markets. You can even tell on DraftKings and other books that they trying to push you to just take the overs plus 1.5, 2.5, 3, and the same with receiving yards, and they want you to take those out lines. The truth is, you got to go to the overs and unders section, and that's where you're really going to know what the true number is according to the market. I think that 80 to 90% of the Super Bowl bets, especially how they build their own same game parlays, is absolute garbage. I think if the sports book is suggesting it, you run away. But you try to do some of the things that will actually work. How does the Super Bowl play out? When I texted you about last week, do you really think there's only going to be 5 pass catchers on the Eagles? No. I'm not sure if they're going to get a ton of yards. AJ Brown and Smith's going to have high numbers, but I'm going to say AJ Brown, Smith, Goddard, Barkley, and Gainwell is 5 of them that are the most common that are going to get their receptions. But guys like Calcutta and Dobson, there's guys that have had made plenty of catches to go over that 5.5 players to record a reception. So I really like that one as well.
What the important stuff? What is the snack menu? What's on the menu here for the Super Bowl?
Well, I got a few of them for you. I just gave out a couple first score field goal.
No,
Um,
food wise, food. What are you eating?
I thought, well, I'm going to hopefully eat some well off these props, but I'm definitely having wings, my man. Wings are my favorite. I've had so much pizza just having 3 kids. I just can't eat anymore. Like we were just at a party today. We had pizza, they had the leftover. I'm done with pizza, man. I'm going to try to eat wings and be a little healthy. I'm trying to lose a few in January, my man, but I love wings and I'm okay to dip it in ranch. Obviously, with all the dips and everything, Super Bowl's got the best food out there, but you don't have to go straight for the heavy stuff.
So that's it. Wings, nothing else.
If you're asking me in December, I'd probably be having all kinds of stuff, but wings is my favorite, so I'm gonna
Okay.
stick with wings.
You
Any
cook or
creative,
you get to go, like you order out, or you actually cook them?
I order out, man. I
Okay.
will order wings from Barrows. It's the closest thing to the original place in Buffalo. Forgetting the name of the bar. I've been there before, and it's the closest thing to their sauce that I've ever had from the original place in Buffalo. And I'm just gonna be getting 24 of those babies.
Okay. Wings is not a bad answer. Any closing thoughts on the Super Bowl before we get to some college basketball thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's some long shots that you can look at, and are all long shots square? I don't know. But like, I'll give you two that I kind of like. Well, first of all, Noah Gray at plus 600 for anytime TD. I mean, it doesn't take it's not hard to figure out the math. He caught 5 touchdowns this year in 20 games, right? Um, if that's the case, his number should be plus 300. That's a 25% chance, he's going to score a touchdown. Well, it's plus 600 in these books. I think he can score a touchdown if you want to get real cute. Plus 3,100 to score the first touchdown. I'm definitely putting a little bit on. So I think Noah Gray is kind of a sleeper there, especially if they're going to be blanketing Kelsey. And it doesn't really seem like Mahomes completely trusts his wide receivers in the red zone. So I kind of like that. And I mean, this is one that is way out there, but I think Butker could be an MVP if they win 18-14.
Wow.
We saw the Steelers beat the Ravens with all 6 field goals earlier this year. It's something that happens, probably over 1% of the time that a team wins on field goals. If it's 1%, it should be plus 100. I mean, this is or sorry, plus 100 to 1, as I'm trying to say, plus 10,000. But, at 250 to 1, I mean, why not? And Butker has went through a lot. It would almost be kind of a story to give it to him after, how, a lot of the media smeared him a little bit for saying some things. It almost kind of would make sense if he's the one to actually win this game. And I don't like Reed. I like Butker if the Chiefs are going to win, in case Mahomes doesn't throw that touchdown and you don't see too many defensive scores.
Wasn't expecting that one. That one's that is certainly a long shot, man. You gave out Indiana to make the playoffs. If you top Indiana and make the playoffs and you give out Butker MVP, you're going in the Shoulda Bet More Hall of Fame, which doesn't exist right now, but we have to create one for you.
That'd
Uh
be awesome.
all right, college basketball. Just I'll let you take it whatever direction you want to go. Teams you think are underrated, teams you think are overrated. We had a lot of upsets this past weekend, a crazy weekend where UConn wins is a pretty big underdog. Arkansas shocks Kentucky. Did this past weekend change your mind? And again, any direction you want to go, underrated, overrated?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I already said in the show before that I thought UConn was a little bit underrated, and Texas Tech as well. But Texas Tech wins outright. They moved from like 22nd on Ken Palm all the way up to 9th. So I can't really say now they're underrated. But I will give you an overrated team. I think Baylor. Was that win more about Baylor, or was it more about Kansas just choking? You know how they choked against Houston a couple weeks ago, or actually a week and a half ago, just the Saturday before. I mean, then Kansas chokes at Baylor up by 20 points. Is Baylor that good? Roach has been injured. They've had another couple key guys that have been injured. I think Baylor might be a little bit overrated at this point. Probably Michigan State a little bit. Now they just lost to USC, but those two I'm going to be a little careful to bet on. Michigan State hasn't played their hard part of the schedule yet. They're coming up right now, and I'll possibly fade them against UCLA. Underrated. Louisville. Louisville's quietly just beating a bunch of teams now. I know they just lost to a tough game at Georgia Tech, and sometimes you don't have the shooting night, and they do, and that's just what it was. But they ripped off about 10 wins in a row before that, beating teams like SMU, beating teams like Pittsburgh away, Clemson. They're going to make the NCAA tournament. And so I think Louisville is a little bit underrated, and, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. They have some really good transfers in. Like I said, UConn, man, what's funny about UConn? I watched them play Marquette. They're really starting to play as a team, minus they did turn over the ball. But when you're ranked in the 30s, like UConn is, in Ken Palm, I mean, you got to remember who this guy is. Hurley has been fantastic. And as much as people don't like him, he gets his guys to play, and they still haven't had Liam McNeely since December. They still haven't had their best player yet in. Once he gets in and starts controlling the guys that just learn how to play without him, I think UConn's going to be very, very dangerous. 10-1 to make the Final Four. Last year I took them 10-1 this time of year to win the world championship, and that thing dropped eventually. I think just getting to the Final Four is important, but I think there's only a certain handful of teams that can win it all, and a few maybes will.
Yeah, the thing with UConn, they just don't defend. Now, they've had seasons where they didn't look great in December, January, February, then March, they flip a switch. Not as much last year. Last year, they were more dominant start to finish. 2 years ago, you would have never thought they were going to do what they did in the tournament, and it's incredible what they've done the past 2 Marches. I just don't know defensively. They just don't seem to have the on-ball defense where they're defending the perimeter that's not the same level it's been the past couple of years.
Yeah, their ball pressure has been horrible.
Yeah.
They rank at 328th in adjusted opponent 3-point percentage, you know. I mean, that's bad, but that can only go up from there, you know. One stat that I like is assists to field goals made. They're number 2 in assists to field goals made. In assist to turnover ratio, they're way up as well. Those are the sneaky teams that you got to find that might have had a bad year defense. You know, maybe it's a little bit like the NBA where they kind of, you know, coast. They just won 2 in a row. They just got to make it to the tournament, and that's when they're going to make some noise, my man. You know, Caravan is an absolute beast down there, and so is Terrace Reed. They got some serious players, even though we still haven't seen Liam McNeely back, who should be back in their very next game. So you're right. Their defense has to get better, especially around the perimeter. But why won't that happen when they've done it the last few years? I think they're underrated.
Auburn, the best team?
Duke's the best team. I know Duke lost to Kansas and Kentucky, but they beat Auburn at home. Duke's the best team, but you know, they have no value on them to bet them. They're like what, plus 390 to win it all or something. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, you can get a better price even if they're the 1 overall seed, you know. Don't be sucker on something like that. Take a longer shot. I took Bama last week because I think Alabama is one of the teams that can win it. I almost feel like that SEC story of not being in the finals in the football could kind of show itself well how well they're playing basketball. And Bama's been there before. Mark Sears is fantastic. So they have the leadership and poise to win 6 games in a row. So I kind of like Alabama, but the teams that can win it all right now is a short list. It's Duke, Alabama, believe it or not, Texas Tech. I just don't think Houston can shoot enough free throws. I like Texas Tech coming out. They're the quiet team. Big money on them, by the way. 50 to 1 you can get, and 20 to at least 10 to 1 to make the Final Four. And then UConn. Those are the 4 teams that I think can win it all. And some of my maybes are Houston. You got to shoot fair free throws. Florida, be more consistent on the road. Iowa State, you got to play better on the road. Maybe Michigan with those 2 tall guys that they got down low. They've been well. And even Louisville's kind of on the maybe list. But this is subject to change, Will. Right now it's Duke, Bama, Texas Tech, and UConn from me.
All right. Last one. I give you a whatever, $100, $500 free bet. Use it or lose it. Who wins the Super Bowl? You have to make a pick or you lose the bet.
Can I use the outline?
Nope. Winner.
Oh, God, you just have to do that to me. Well, you know what? I'm just going to say I'm going to go by my metrics and I'm going to say the Eagles, but
Okay.
I'm still saying 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the guts to pick the Eagles. It's just, you know, you pick the Chiefs all these times, they win. It's just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I keep coming back to it's probably going to be a close game, tied 1 possession late. And in that kind of scenario, do you want Mahomes, Andy Reid, and a good kicker in Butker, or do you want Hurts, Sirianni, who could be shaky? Hurts can be up and down, and then a shaky kicker in Elliott. So, boy, it'd be crazy if they won 3 in a row. It really would. This is
It certainly would, but it also, you know, almost wouldn't. I mean, they're things are benefiting them. They're doing a great job in the clutch. You know, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say Kansas City. I'm just making a pick. I'm not betting money on the side. You know, I'm not betting money on the side. I have enough bets going with the props, and I expect a lot more this week as the numbers creep up a little bit. So that's where I'm going to have my fun, Will.
It's a shame it's the last game, not only because it's the last game, but it's such a great teaser leg with Philly where, man, during regular season or some other time, you'd love to have Philly plus 7.5 and you just put your feet up and you feel pretty good. They'll at least cover a teaser because even when Kansas City wins, it's close, but you can't really tease totals and there's nothing to tease it with.
Well, Mike Palm's coming on my show tomorrow. I'll ask him to put a circle line up for week 1 so we can, you know, just give me a 2.5, Mike. You know, maybe we'll be able to find something to tease.
Yes, our preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, which I would say is not that far away, but that's a lie. It is kind of far away.
Yeah, you know, I know a guy that actually does some teasers in college basketball and puts them with the NFL.
No,
but the dude wins teasers, man. Somehow he wins them. I don't know. But you know, it's something I would never do. I don't tease.
I don't think I've ever teased the basketball. You don't even you get like 4 points on a teaser in basketball, right?
He knows where to get 6, so I don't know.
Oh, you can get 6 in a basketball. I guess if you, I don't know enough about it. The thing is, the points are so cheap in a football game, especially in the NFL, where you should pretty much almost never tease college. Rare exceptions, but there's only so many points. There's only so many different scores. Like the points are so valuable and the lines are so tight. Where the teaser, it almost works against the book. In basketball, it's just the points the points are cheap, so it doesn't quite work that way.
Oh yeah. I mean, basketball, anything can happen, but it also comes to theory. If you're close to betting the right side and you're wrong on the handicap, that's on you anyway, right?
Yeah.
You're just moving the point 6 points. I still can't do it because the variance is way too high. I'm
Yes.
just going to be 54% or better on my sides in basketball and my totals, and I'll be pretty happy. Basketball is a tough sport. It's not for the weak-hearted. A lot of bad beats. You have overtime a lot, and it's tough to bet. But once you get on a nice roll, man, it sure can add up to your bankroll.
Kev, appreciate the time, man. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, check us out, theoddsbreakers.com. We're gonna have a couple great Super Bowl shows this week. Mike Palm's coming on tomorrow for Tuesday's show, and we still don't have a guest for Thursday yet, but we're going to have another great guest and talk all Super Bowl props. We're going to give out a ton of great ones that we actually think have value, not just, trying to guess. And that's what we do at the Odds Breakers, only bet value.
Appreciate the time, man. It was good to catch up. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks again, Will.
All right, that'll do it. Rate, review, subscribe. We'll be back Friday with one more preview of the Super Bowl. Last thoughts, a pick, prediction, all of that. We'll dive into a little bit more on Friday, and we will turn the page. Well, we'll do Super Bowl on Monday. We'll do a reaction to the Super Bowl, and then we will move on. If football season never totally ends, you have draft and off-season stuff, so it's not like football will totally be forgotten. But we will turn the page here pretty soon. But one more last preview on Friday. We will see you then. Thanks for listening.